przybyli na Noc Naukowców Politechniki Śląskiej, zarówno
we have all the people who have arrived for the Researchers' Night in Gliwice, Katowice, and Zabrze. It is the 16th time that we are starting this event, so important for all of us. I can see here Deputy Rector for Infrastructure and Promotion, Tomasz Trawiński, Professor Aleksandra Chrupała, Director of the Center for Promotion and Popularization of Science, the main organizer of this Researchers' Night. And I'd like to thank the professor and thank whole team of the professor who made a lot and went into a lot of pain so that we could meet here. May I also welcome Grzegorz Kwitek and Jacek Bialik, president of the Katowice Special Economic Zone. Grzegorz Kwitek is representative of the Metropolis, Dr. Marcin Popczyk, president of the Foundation for the Department of Mining, Security, Engineering and Industrial Automation at the Silesian University of Technology. May I welcome also you who are participating here, who are in front of us, who are at their computer screens, and we are offering you 120 events, of which 50 are workshops with live participation. Then there are streams through the YouTube of the university, 6 such activities, then online video. We have 22 of those. And then there are more than 40, precisely 42 Zoom events. So it is a huge, huge thing to do. And may I welcome all those who are curious of the world, who want to play and also learn what science has given us. I welcome everyone, irrespective of your age and irrespective of your level of education. Have fun. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this event would never ever have happened if not for the fact that our academics want to share their knowledge. It's important to know who supports us. The organizer is the Silesian University of Technology, but if not for our institutional partner, the Metropolis of Upper Silesia and Zagłębie, and the partner is the city of Gliwice, the honorary patronage is the Kuratorium, which is the Education Supervision Authority, the Council for Promotion of Polish Academy of Science, Ministry of Education and Science. Now the sponsors are Polish Mining and Oil Mining, DB Cargo SA, Przedsiębiorstwo Energetyki Cieplnej SPZO Gliwice, EUWIC, APA, Górnośląskie Towarzystwo Lotnicze, IOT, and Śląska Sieć Metropolitarna. We also have received gifts from the Foundation of PGE, Polska Grupa Energetyczna, Foundation for the Department of Mining, Security, Engineering and Industrial Automation. And we have media patrons, Radio CCM, TVP3, Katowice, Dziennik Zachodni, Daily, and Nasze Miasto. We would like to hear some encouragement from our partners and sponsors. So it's time for the metropolitan area of Upper Silesia and Zagłębie, and then you will be encouraged to join us and to study with us and really function, live your lives here in Gliwice and Katowice. Good afternoon. The metropolitan area from the very start has been a part of this 16th round of the Researchers' Night. We know here that development, economic as well as social, is connected to science. That's why we created this fund, which makes studying more attractive, which encourages young people to study in the universities of this metropolitan area in Silesia and in Zagłębie, so that you could stay here for longer and so that you could stay in all the cities that are parts of our metropolis. I hope that you will find plenty of joy and plenty of inspiration in today's very good fun, which is precisely what I'd like to wish you, good fun. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so glad that the Special Economic Zone in Katowice can again participate in this event. And we are also doing it for our investors. We want to invest into science among young people and to encourage everyone who would like to study at the technical university so that our investors can have the new staff, the new human resources who will be able to fight in the special economic zone.
Hello, good afternoon. One of the symbols of our cities of Zabrze, in this case, is the university campus that is very much vibrant, and this is one of the pillars of the University of Technology of Silesia. And our asset is that we have the university, and therefore popularizing and promoting the university is a great pleasure, but also great honor for our town. Good afternoon. I would like to welcome the Skodli Foundation for the Faculty of Mining Engineering, Security and Automation has been supporting such initiatives and supporting students and the staff for many years now. And we're very pleased, and for me, it's a great honor that I'm here with you and that we, as the foundation, can contribute in our own way to this beautiful initiative that is related with science and popularization of science. And if I may say so, I do encourage you to study here, to be with us, and to live within our academic community. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the 16th time now that we're driven by passion. We are encouraging you to discover the secrets of science. Please use this exceptional opportunity to ask questions, ask about many different fields of knowledge, and be there in search for knowledge. I do wish wonderful impressions during this night, but also I do hope that the upcoming months will be very much interesting, and we're looking already forward to starting the next Researchers' Night. So I do wish you a very good and interesting time together with our scientists. Ladies and gentlemen, within the framework of Researchers' Nights, we have made a number of, we have started a competition for the best projects, and here we have representatives of people who have been awarded after, as a result of the Researchers' Night, and I'm going to read out the names of those people. I would like to ask them to join me on the stage, and the rector of the Silesian University of Technology will be giving the awards for the project Simple Complex Machine, Violeta Rusiniak, and the teacher will receive the award on behalf of her group. Is Violeta Rusin together with us? Milena Szostak, Magdalena Mamut, the participants of the group. I am not sure if they hear me. Yes, of course, please join us here. And I would like to also invite the ladies from the Center for the Popularization of Science to present the award. And we don't bite, don't be afraid of us, but I can't see you because I'm blinded. Milena Szostak, Magdalena Mamut, the first place, and Violeta Rusin, the teacher. Are you here with us or not? Oh yes, there you are. Please join us. Girls, come on here on the stage. So the rector will shake your hands. It's very important. And there are so many of you. We have quite a mix-up here. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, the Goldberg's Simple Machine project, tell us about it. What is it that you have developed, and how does it look like? But please use the mic. As that is the name indicates, it was a ball that was falling through. How to describe it? Why so stressed? So what was it there? Is it chemistry? What is it about? It's about physics. So first the ball there with a heavy weight, and then it was moving it upwards. Did you have fun? Did you like it or not really? Oh yes, we liked it a lot. So next year you're going to join us again. Of course, we will. Here are the diplomas. Thank you very much, and the awards. And if you could please pass on our regards to your teacher and the award as well. Congratulations. And Magdalena Mamut. And here are the prizes. And now, secondary school, mechanical reaction. We apologize for a little bit of a confusion here on the stage, but we have to learn how to operate in this new environment. But luckily, we're moving away from online. And now, rubric called Break Machine. The first place, mechanical reaction, Alicja and Aleksandra Stash, the teacher. Please join us. Do we have the diplomas? Yes, a round of applause. And the rector will present you with the diplomas. Thank you. Thank you very much. And Alicja Strojek. And if you could pass it on to Szymon, please. Thank you very much. And here are the prizes. Thank you. And the third place, the scientific mix. Piotr Jurkiewicz, Agata Krupa, Marek Prosek, Matylda Leśniak, Agnieszka Lewandowska, Katarzyna Oliwa-Piec, Maciej Trzeja, Wojciech Płazik, Jan Zakrzewski, Mateusz Muda, the participants. And please, I would like the representatives to join us here on the stage. Rector, please present the diplomas. It's quite a large team. And this is quite a large group. If you just could perhaps give all of the awards and diplomas to Olivia, and she will distribute between the members of the group. Thank you very much. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, due to the situation, we invite only the representatives and the youngest one. I would like to invite Aleksandra and Joanna to join us on the stage to receive an award for the song. And here we have the youngest representative. Here you are. So all of the diplomas, also to the youngest. Thank you very much. Oh gosh, that's a big one. Will you help? Of course, that's all for you. Congratulations. And the next group of the youngest scientists, Katarzyna Kapica and Jowina Tkulik, the teachers, please join us. Undoubtedly with a young representative together with you. Do we have the ladies in the room? I think they're not here. But in this case, a poem and a story of a scientist, Monika Gante, also the present, and also the song Young Scientists. I understand that she's not here, but we have the kindergarten number 11 from Dąbrowa Górnicza. And I know that a representative of the kindergarten is here and here with a really young scientist. A big round of applause. So we're going to present the diplomas. And by the way, what is your name? Victor, you are. And what is this poem about? You won't tell us, no? And those are diplomas for you. Congratulations. 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 Ladies and gentlemen, and the next competition, many names of a science, about science in art. Nadia Krokowicz, Nina Halaman, and Michał Grela, 9-year-olds. do you represent the group? Are there any other representatives? Oh, there are many more representatives of the group, so please join us on the stage. So a big round of applause. So what was it about? I talked about the discovery of blood groups, and I also drew a picture of different blood types. That was quite a discovery. And what did you do? Unfortunately, I cannot hear. The microphone is too far away from the child. So you drew a picture of space. Wonderful, wonderful. A great round of applause to our young scientists. And this is for Michał. Congratulations once again. And another group, it's 10 to 15-year-olds, discovery of America. Marcelina Kuba, they're not here, but Jana Nowak is here. So please join us. Kinga Walicek and Hanna Kuczyńska. All the three laureates are here. Please join us.
Jana Nowak, tak? Tutaj.
Gratuluję Ci serdecznie.
Tak ostrożnie. Jeszcze raz bardzo gratulujemy serdecznie. Świetna robota.
Congratulations, great job. And the third group, 16 to 19-year-old, Daria Koterba is not present, but Alicja Jasińska, Zuzana Ziemi, and Magdalena Ochman are here with us. So I would ask a representative of the group to receive the award, the Many Names of Science. And that's an award for the entire group. Congratulations. Ladies and gentlemen, and the next competition, experiments for everyone, young and old, for a popular scientific movie. Secondary school, grade 6 to 8, Kinga Walicek, Hanna Kuczyńska, Ameryta Berg, and Emilia Kostynik, and Hanna Krelek, and Ewelina Szewczak was their teacher. So I'd like to invite the representatives.
Gratulacje jeszcze raz. Drugie miejsce, eksperymenty.
Second place, experiments with the use of carbon oxide, an egg in the bottle. The representatives are not here. Rafał Janik, the teacher, was their caretaker, and secondary school, the first place electrolyzer made at home. Małgorzata Popławska, the teacher, represents the group. Please join us on the stage.
Serdecznie gratulujemy.
Heartfelt congratulations. And the second place, Tęcza, Dominika, Karolina, and their teacher. May we invite you to the stage? Heartfelt congratulations. Ladies and gentlemen, the third group are not here: Lampa Lava, Victoria, Julia, Daria, Victoria, Weronika, and their teacher, Kornelia Piątkowska. Congratulations. Now, the fifth competition that we have also already gone through is the molecular cuisine through stomach to science. 3 honorable mentions, not everyone is here. Number 1, molecular bomb, Karolina, Maja, Barbara, Urszula. Second is the fruit caviar, Daniel. And the third, boys' kitchen, Mateusz and Jakub. And Mateusz Smuda and Jakub Goryczka, could you come here? Because I know you're here with us. And please collect your prize. Let's wait for a moment. The room is big and some people have to cover quite a long distance to get here. Congratulations. Once again, a big round of applause. And now, my dear, green tea pasta, brune ice cream of Kinga. Kinga, please join us. And Milena Szostek, that's the pasta, green tea pasta. Kinga Waliczek, are you there? Yes, okay. Everything's fine, as you should be here. Your diplomas. Congratulations. And I believe that there's one more person. All right, fantastic. There you are, your diploma. And a great big round of applause. Congratulations. I'm sorry. We will take a photo later on. Congratulations. And they are all the winners. So a big round of applause. Great job from the youngest to the oldest. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope that our streams, we have 6 of them now, also those on YouTube and live, will meet your popular scientific expectations. Now, the Center for Promotion of Science of the Silesian University of Technology, which organized this event for you, put plenty of heart into it for you, and we hope that you will enjoy what our university has prepared for you. Thank you very much, Your Magnificence. Thank you very much, Deputy Rector, and all gentlemen to whom I am turned with my back, because unfortunately, to make this video, well, I have to face someone and also face someone with my back. Okay, enjoy, and we don't finish until 9 p.m. and everything here is...
Dzień dobry Państwu. Chciałabym się na samym początku podzielić z Państwem pewnym...
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. May I first share a certain experience with you? It was several years ago, and that was during a training moment, Paris 13 University, a language laboratory where experts were collecting data for what was called machine translation, not automatic. When I was there, the university was getting a similar event for promotion like the one that's gathered us here. And my French colleagues came from it really head over heels. I asked, what was it? And they say, we had that balloon stand, we had computers, which we could use to show the results of our work to the visitors. But the problem was that hardly anyone was interested. I say, I saw all those people. Yes, there were crowds, but you know, they were crowds waiting to be able to see the stand next. They were biologists, and they had an ant colony. None of the people waiting there was even interested in listening to what young people fascinated in machine translation knew. I arrived from that trip not only richer because I talked to professors whom I before knew only from publications, but also I had that observation that I made together with my French colleagues. Dear popularizer, you have an interesting subject. If you want to share it with people, but these are humanities, get an animal. If you only have balloons and a computer, you may fail. The presence of an animal won't guarantee your success, but significantly increases your opportunity to get the interest of the person you want to attract. May I invite you to the presentation about why chimpanzees don't talk and human? Well, yes, they do. Now you probably know why I have a chimpanzee, an animal, in the subject. Guess why a chimpanzee? Not that they communicate in some spectacular manner, but simply that they are very much human. Intelligent, social, and first of all, loud, just like humans. As yet, we haven't managed, despite plenty of attempts, to teach any primate, any chimpanzee, how to talk. We have managed quite efficiently teach chimpanzees to communicate with the humans using a specific code, a language. You could call it a sign language, a language of images, but no chimpanzee has been taught to speak. Why? Well, we still don't know, but we have formed quite interesting hypotheses. In the 1960s, there was that theory that the flaw lies in the problem in the glottis of the apes, chimpanzees, or the humanoid apes. Does it mean that the human is built differently, that we have an organ, some thing that is specialized for talking? On the one hand, yes, we do. On the other hand, no, we don't. Let's start from the no part. Let's see how the vocal apparatus of the human being is built. And when we see what this phonetic apparatus is built of, we'll see that these are organs that are necessary primarily for the fundamental functions like breathing, swallowing, chewing, biting. There is actually nothing that would specialize in talking only. And all these are also present in the ape. And yet the ape won't talk to you. Where's the problem? If we take a look at those individual organs in the human and chimpanzee's body, we'll see certain differences in quality rather than in volume. What we see immediately is what's marked in blue here, namely that the tongue of a chimpanzee is massive, it's huge. There's hardly any space in the vocal cavity to move. The next element, red, throat. In a chimpanzee, there's far smaller volume. Why? Because the pharynx, together with the vocal cords are marked here in the slide in green. The human larynx is far lower. In apes, in primates, it's much higher. So it blocks a bit of our pharyngeal cavity, and it's not big enough. What are the consequences? On the one hand, that distribution of certain elements is very practical in apes because it guarantees them the possibility of breathing and swallowing at the same time. They won't choke on that. But there is also a negative element to that. You won't be able to produce sounds when you're an ape because the sound there in the larynx is, I'd call it a semi-product. It's still quite quiet. It doesn't have this vocal color. It will gain it. It will get the proper shape only in those resonators that are situated above the pharynx. In human, you can do it. In apes, no, you can't. Well, looking at this larynx being higher, well, in newborns, in neonates, it's also high. We're also mammals, and we also must learn how to eat and breathe at the same time. Around the 4th month of the human life, this larynx starts to go down. However, the latest research has proven that the studies from 1969 perhaps did not let us achieve the proper conclusions. The latest studies seem to deny the what Lieberman said, that the ape's vocal cords can't produce those. Well, their vocal skills are much greater than we had thought before. The problem is perhaps that apes don't have sufficiently refined brain, a center in their brain that could manage the operation of talking. This, at a first glance, seems something very easy, not complicated at all. Don't we talk all the time? And it doesn't tire us much. But let's take a look. I hope that now you can see now how many things you need to coordinate for the sound to come up. For the human speech to be there, you need to coordinate plenty of muscles with a process of breathing, by the way. A talking human must plan how much breath they need to be able to pronounce a whole phrase on a single breath. Luckily, the human brain has been wired from the start for the young human to learn to speak. Our brain is highly refined, luckily. This process of speaking won't come just by itself. This little human, before they say the first words, they've got to do a lot of work. Technically, this young human must adjust the phonetical apparatus to be able to say words, make sounds of the human language. They're not aware that they're doing that. They first start while feeding. I'd like to emphasize that all the natural methods of feeding, starting from breastfeeding in the beginning, to very patient spoon feeding, to giving opportunities to a child to chew. Perhaps first these are semi-liquid foods, then maybe even solid foods. All this makes us invest into the practicing of the child's phonetic apparatus. Let me give you an example. When we bottle feed, I don't want you to believe I'm one who suggests that we shouldn't bottle feed. Sucking is different. I don't know whether you will manage to see it, but I'll stand here with my side. I hope, which side should I stand? Okay, I'm not going to make your life hard. It's like that. When a child is fed naturally, sucking is more or less like that. The tongue of a child works very strongly, and a bottle goes like that. We're not practicing our tongue. We practice rather the muscles of our cheek. Now, spoon feeding, I must say, mostly I can see men in the room. Gentlemen have that bad custom of doing it like this. I've seen it with my husband. A spoon, a child opens the mouth and we go bang, throw it in and, well, crack and done. It's already in the mouth. No, they need to have this opportunity of taking that. There's no other way to practice your lips. And then the problem of the mugs. When I was little, all children were learning how to drink from the mug and that they wouldn't drip. Now we have those no drip mugs. They are very useful, but it certainly doesn't help a young child to achieve the goal, the purpose to which they were programmed. Just the technical practice won't guarantee your success. We have to know that it's a social construct. I'm talking about language, about speech. Until you meet another human, you won't start learning to speak. A human must start to speak. Unfortunately, the wild children who were found being brought up by animals without a human contact, or in contact with humans who decided not to speak to those children at all, those discoveries very clearly show that if a child doesn't meet on their path a living human who would be addressing that child, who would be eager to communicate, a healthy child won't start at all to learn to speak, or will lose the skill, those facilities they achieved earlier. But let's assume that this is a healthy child and that parents want to say something. That's fascinating because the mind of such a child is focused on communication and is focused on catching out and then mimicking all the sounds of the language in which this child is immersed. In linguistics, we speak of language.
Absolutnie genialnymi obywatelami całego świata. Wszystko jedno, czy będzie to
Little
język.
children are fantastic citizens of the whole world, whether Polish, Quechua, Swahili, or Mandarin Chinese. A little child will start to tell apart the sounds and then imitate them. We know that we adults are far, far behind when it comes to that, far, far behind the little kids, because children are citizens of the world. We, the adults, are just locals. When does this happen? When does this localization take place? When does our brain change so that it ceases to be sensitive to all the variety and starts to focus only on what is around locally? Well, turns out that it takes place quite at an early age. If we could listen to children doing their Gaga speeches at 8 or 9 months, we would see that a child who does it in Polish sounds a bit different than a Mandarin-speaking child, Quechua-speaking, or English-speaking, or Swahili-speaking child, just because their brains make their statistics and calculations. They are programmed to focus on the differences that are important in this baby cooing or babbling, on the significant differences. And our brains learn to ignore everything that doesn't bring semantic differences. Maybe I need an example because what I said is not clear, it's not obvious to all and sundry. When working with students, I present 3 fundamental nasal French vowels. It turns out that the difference between 2 of them, that is L and O, is absolutely understandable and easy to perceive for a Polish student. It doesn't give us any trouble and a Polish student can follow those. But the difference between O and O is completely unnoticeable for many. May I repeat? O and O. Why so? Well, precisely because the brains of my students in the childhood went through a training. They were bombarded with plenty of sounds, and they made certain calculations and went through certain statistics. It turns out that in Polish, the difference between L and O is significant. We have mąka and męka. We have pęk róż and pąk róży. But whether you say pąk or pąk róży, this difference doesn't make a change. The brains of my students have learned to ignore those differences. Even if they hear those differences, in many cases, they cannot naturally imitate. The brains of 8 or 9-month-old French make different observations. In French, the difference between un, on, and un is semantically significant. There's this significance. The first is bath, then good, and then comes grace. So the French language children will have different observations here. Now that waking of a child to speaking, to language is fascinating not only for persons who are parents, it's fascinating for experts, for researchers, scientists. A little child, 3 or 4 year old, starts to speak freely using certain grammatical principles that they were never taught. Nobody explained those to them. They somehow use those principles nonetheless in what they say. Let's take, for example, declension in Poland. No one tells a little child, listen, now we're going to use nouns. Nouns have masculine, feminine, and neuter genders, and I'll tell you how they work in individual cases. But this doesn't mean that the brain of a little child doesn't make this principles. No, they work, they make statistics. But for these statistics that will make us build those matrices, patterns of declension, a little child needs plenty of information. Luckily, parents, adults provide plenty of such material. Let's imagine 2 people going for a walk with such a little child, and suddenly something interesting turns up within the field of vision of that child. We have a balloon, but let it be a little ball. What does an involved parent do? Hey, look, looky, what is that? A ball? Hey, a boy's playing with a ball. You'll have a ball like that one day. Hey, look for it. Hey, it's leaping. No ball. Okay, no ball, so say bye-bye to a ball. Okay, we doing bye-bye to a ball. Well, an average passerby will say, hey, how much they're talking, and the child doesn't understand anything, enough to say a ball. The child was lucky to hear it all. What's happened? We had ball called piłeczka, o piłeczce z piłeczką. We had a whole list, a whole pattern of declension of that noun. If that repeats sufficiently often, this will be coded as a matrix into the mind of a small child. Whether the closer it is, the better etched it is, the easier it will be to use in the future. Piłeczka, laleczka, sukieneczka, these are Polish diminutives. Szklaneczka meaning little something. Some would say, well, parents overuse those diminutives, but, well, they are justified. Piłeczka, szklaneczka, sukieneczka, all those forms are certainly clearer in showing formal similarity of those words than piłka, szklanka, sukienka. So little wonder that in the language or tongue of all the child-minders, parents, you have so many of those. Important thing is to know when to finish with those. Even though a child may create those matrices, there are mistakes. Mistakes are very cool, cute for parents and a clear signal to scientists that a child becomes very creative about language acquisition. Many 4-year-old said chleb z sólem instead of solą. But it's not the fault of that child that sól is declined differently. You said chleb z dżemem, bread with jam, something z pieprzem, z kurczakiem, with chicken, with pepper, but they sound differently. Okay, let's say ból, which is pain, and we say z bólem and not sólem. So those exceptions are something that a child will only learn later. These are the new creations in flexion, a nice stage in the development of a child's speech. So there are those new word coinages, and that's a proof that a child approaches the language creatively and corrects all the errors, all the gaps, semantic gaps that we see in our language. I wonder whether you can understand all those words. Pilnowaczka is, of course, somebody who pilnuje, so a lady who looks over children. Kupowanka is either a person who is buying or selling. Pistoleciarz, if we say gadżeciarz, somebody who likes gadgets, so why can't you call pistoleciarz someone who's got it? Skakalnia, like bawialnia. In bawialnia you play. Ćwierkoty, well, all the ćwierking birds. And now my other famous favorite film, Nowocie. What are nowocie? Nobody knows, okay. That's the opposite of starocie. Starocie and nowocie. Starocie, all things. Then niesłuchliwy, somebody who doesn't want to answer questions, not listening. Chudzielec is thin, so grubielec must be thick. Bolenie, it's a situation when we feel ból, and poszybszać meaning going faster, from szybki meaning fast. The child is most creative in this aspect in the kindergarten. Never again will they be so inventive. Humans will never be so creative and inventive as at that time. Now, the first tongue is something that we take in without many greater effort. It just comes by itself. A child will be efficient and proficient user around the 6th year of life. It doesn't happen to the following languages. Those need the operation of conscious learning. And sometimes it takes quite an effort, unless we have a child who at the same time is learning more than one language. Well, that's the situation of bilinguality. We have two fundamental types of it. That can be, a child can be simultaneously bilingual when this language comes in very early, below 3, and also consecutive when only the second one comes. So that's called successive. Bilinguality is a great thing, really, for the human, primarily for the human brain. And it reinforces human creativity, and it helps to develop intelligence, make you smart. And if you feel some frustration, it's too late. Pity that nobody gave me that opportunity when I was a child to learn more than one language. Let me tell you, don't be alarmed, don't be afraid. Bilinguality comes not only in childhood with children who are learning 2 languages because they are being brought up in a family where mom and dad speak different languages. There's mommy language and daddy language. Or they live in a country which is not the home country of the parents. We have also those who have parents who speak more than one language.
Dzień dobry, nazywam się Marta Kieł-Jamrozik. Jestem pracownikiem Katedry Biomateriałów i Inżynierii Wyrobów Medycznych Wydziału Inżynierii Biomedycznej.
I worked at the Faculty of Bioengineering of the University of Technology to talk about biomimetics, that is how nature inspires scientists. And let us begin with talking about biomimetics. What is it? And there are many different notions. So begin with the word bio. So there is a broad spectrum that is related with medicine, but with biomimetics is different because it consists of bios, which is life, and mimes, that is follow, imitate. And therefore, this is a part of science that deals with following and mimicking the nature so as to build ever better machines, materials, and tools using the solutions that are already present in nature as a result of millions of years of evolution. Nature is sometimes understood as natural environment, and indeed this is a great designer. Nature has developed through a billion years of evolution. Many species of plants and animals, not all of them have been classified yet, and they all live or used to live, adapting to the current environment. And also they have developed most economic mechanisms and most effective mechanisms. All those mechanisms work in a very economical way, following the principles of minimum of energy and maximum efficiency. And this is what we must learn from the nature, so that this is exactly the same way that we can operate. And we may have a look at many different examples that inspire us. And there are many different examples, just a few of them are on the screen. Those are the more important ones, but undoubtedly it is impossible to talk about all of them, but I would like to present them as quickly as possible. Some inspirations with nature so as to create some innovative biomimetic materials and tools. And for instance, the kingfisher, the abalone seashell may inspire it. Also, we can mention the spotty fish, the water lilies, the termites, water horse, the insects running on the water, bear's fur, a shark that uses the echolocation principle, and dolphins. So you can see there are many different examples, but I would like to begin with the burdock. And this is how the biomimetics has actually accelerated. Now, how does it happen? How was it? Usually, inventions are an effect of serendipity. Velcro, for instance, was designed by a Swiss engineer, John Gemistral, who was walking with his dog, and as he was walking on the meadows, his dog was catching a lot of fruit of burdock. And so he started thinking, why was it happening? What is this mechanism that actually makes those little balls so easily attach to the fur of the dog? So, being curious, he collected several burdock fruits and had a closer look under the microscope, and he noticed that the little needles that create the entire surface of the burdock are made of little needles with little hooks at the tips. And those were the hooks that made it possible for the fruit, for the berry, to attach to the fur of the dog. So then he thought, okay, maybe this could be used. Maybe this solution could be used so as to create a new type of a material, a new type of a zip that would replace the buttons and zippers that were very popular. But the biggest problem in all that was the production of this type of hooks, because he had to find some type of material that would be capable of being flexible and rigid at the same time. Because we understand that those are needles with little hooks at the end, should be both flexible and rigid. And he had to find kind of material that would be good enough, that would be capable of connecting and disconnecting easily, but without any damage done to the material. And in search for the best material it took him 10 years to design such a material, and only some time later he was capable of finding material made of nylon, and that is the material that was used for the production of such hooks. And this is how they could connect easily with the cotton threads. And this is how he had robotized the production. He patented that, and that solution was called a trade name of Velcro. He obviously expected to become successful immediately. He thought that would immediately revolutionize the buttoning up. He thought it was a new type of a zip, but it was not the case. Many companies, clothing companies, were not actually interested in this type of a solution, and they were quite reticent until the time when Mr. Mistral went to New York Fair to show his solution, and at that time European shops were already selling that, and he presented his solution. It was noticed by the producers of clothing for skiers, sports clothing, sportswear and diving wear. And the first clothes with Velcro were produced for sportswear, but the breakthrough happened when this type of look was got on NASA's radar. The NASA was looking for new types of locks for the suits, and also in the spaceship they needed to attach different elements and objects in the same place on board of the spaceship. And so they became interested in Velcro, and they applied this. They started using Velcros on the handcuffs of cosmonauts, and they started using Velcro inside the spaceships. And then there was this general development of this type of material, and this type of material was used by the cosmonauts. For instance, they started using Velcros for their wristwatches, and then many designers at that time started asking Velcro for the permission of using the Velcro zip in their design clothing. And another breakthrough was the use of Velcro when Puma, that is a producer of sports footwear, became interested in Velcro. And this is when the new era began. This is when footwear, Velcro was being used in sports footwear. First for children, then for adults. And then this material is still being used as Velcro material, but now we have many different solutions, less expensive solutions based on Velcro, because the patent of this engineer expired sometime later. Another inspiration, it's this little bird, the kingfisher, and a designer of fast trains thought of constructing ever faster and quieter trains. So what is the story? The Japanese engineers started producing ever faster trains, but then it turned out that those trains being very fast, they're also very loud. And a train like that could be heard from a large distance. And moreover, this effect was magnified when the train was going through a tunnel. And one of the Japanese engineers was a bird watcher. And so he started looking for a solution. Where is it that in nature we have a creature that would move very fast and do it very quietly? And this is when he started observing a kingfisher. And this kingfisher has got this specific body structure because the beak is quite long with a big head if compared with the rest of the body of the bird. And this is a very fast bird. It dives with this at a speed of 40 kilometers per hour, does it very quietly without ever disturbing the surface of the water. And so he created a very long, designed a very long beak of the train, and the oblong shape was the result of the study of an owl. So this use of shape and the use of this ergonomic shape of the train made it possible for the trains to travel even faster. But first and foremost, they became less noisy. And the train that we know here in Poland is the Pendolino train. And here you can see other trains, and Pendolino seems to be the slowest one because Pendolino can travel at a speed of 200 kilometers per hour. And if we look at other trains, it's the Japanese railway line Shinkansen, and their speed is approximately 320 kilometers per hour. And they're already testing the newest Shinkansen trains series, that is the Maglev. And their beak is 15 meters long, and the design speed is 500 up to 600 kilometers per hour. But those trains are still being tested, and they are not regular rail trains, but those are the hovering trains on the magnetic support. And obviously developing such trains, designing such trains means that they have to think about special rail to carry such trains with this speed. Another inspiration with nature is the little termites. And the termites develop this quite specific cones. Usually they are made of earth. Mounds have quite a number of inlets and channels, and such a structure, such a mound, has its own air conditioning system. So cooling this structure is done by the wind entering into the mound in the upper part of it, and in the lower parts, and the hot air is taken out through the top part. So this has become an inspiration for building a trade center in Zimbabwe. And so the basic idea was to lower the cost of air conditioning in the operations of such a building in a very hot environment, hot climate. And so what they used prefabricated reinforced concrete elements, and this is how the building was built. And also there are balconies that provide for better air conditioning and the flow of air. And also on the balconies, they added some green elements, greenery, that absorbed hot air that is entering inside. So how does air conditioning work? So the air is pumped at night time when the temperature is cooler. So the user, they were using the lower floors to pump in the air to cool them down, and the hot air was let out through the top floors. And once the temperature inside was regulated, they would close the inflow of air, and this is how they were waiting for the high temperatures to come. And once the temperature outside was increasing, the temperature was increasing outside the building, then the hot air, using the system of ventilation, was also moved from the lower floors of the building, and the air was moving through the cooled down floors, and so the heated air was moved out through the top part of the building, and this is how the temperature was kept cooler inside the building. And the use of energy the use of electrical energy in this building in comparison with conventional buildings with the conventional air conditioning system. Actually, the cost of energy was merely 10% of what otherwise would have been used in the case of a conventional air conditioning system. So quite a profitable solution. And another good solution is something that was taken from the peripherance. We know that there are some tall buildings that are exposed to gravitational load. And we may think of a created structure that would increase their resilience. And this is exactly the solution that is being currently used for the designing of sky rises, but also it's used for designing high cranes that are exposed to strong winds and climate conditions. Also, this is how bridges have been designed using the sponges. So we can see that different beams are designed exactly the way they run in hexactinellate sponges. And some studies on hexactinellate sponges show that even small elements with such structures have their carrying capacity, carrying load 20% higher than any other structure. And this is how the same structure could be used for building higher buildings. Another source of inspiration, those are spiders. Spiders, we either like the spiders or we hate spiders, but regardless of our likes or dislikes of spiders, but we know spiders are creating this fiber that is woven into a spider web. And this is how spiders are capable of developing different structures between the shrubs. And the spiders have been with us for a long time, and spiders have been around for 400 million years, and they're here to stay, I guess, the smaller and the bigger spiders. However, the spider web that they produce is very durable. It is capable of absorbing energy. It is not that easy to disrupt. It's degradable. So this is how we deal with the waste utilization costs. It's also more extendable than nylon. And this fiber is more resilient than steel fibers, for instance, and carbon fibers. So how to use that? So one can use this spider silk. We can actually use the silk to produce different fabrics that later on are used for the production of very durable fabrics. But there is a problem as far as spider webs are concerned. And as far as production of such spiders are concerned, those are the spiders in question. Those are the golden orb web spiders, because they build the largest and the most durable cobwebs. The size of such a cobweb could be 6 meters high and 2 meters wide. However, the basic problem with these spiders and the breeding is concerned that they like each other a lot. They are cannibals, so they need to be set apart so that they do not eat each other, so that this production is done without any warfare between them. So sometimes they say that it is easier to breed. It is way easier to breed other insects that would not have this propensity for cannibalism, but these spiders produce 7 types of spiderweb thread, and depending on the purpose, it could be supporting web, it could be building web, it could be transporting web, and so on and so forth. So one spider and many different solutions. And this is a biodegradable web, and in nature, as spiders create their cobwebs, once they mend their cobweb, they actually eat it. Now, why do we see a goat on this picture? There are more and more scientific research results that show that the protein in the cobweb is very beneficial, as we can produce many different medical drugs using the cobweb protein, but it's quite difficult to extract that protein. And therefore, they say that there are transgenic goats. It's a special breed of a goat that is injected with spider's protein, cobweb protein. So this protein is already present in the goat's organism, and then it permeates into the milk, goat milk, and then goat milk may be used for the production of medical drugs. Another inspiration is the inspiration of lotus flowers. When the lotus flower opens up in the morning, it cleans itself. So they took such a leaf of a lotus flower for microscopic study, and it turns out that this surface is not even. It's fairly well developed. You can see that there is a number, that there is a number of structures, and they are covered with natural type of wax. And this wax means that water rolls down on the surface and thus flushes all the dirt away, and the surface stays clean. And this is exactly the solution that is being used a lot these days, especially in the era of the pandemic. We're trying to come up with solutions to create self-cleaning surfaces and rooms. Self-cleaning capacity is very important, and many solutions are already being used all over the world. And here you can see a ship's hull, and this hull is covered with a special coating of self-cleaning layer made of sea algae. Or, for instance, the tall buildings are also covered with this material, and this is why these buildings do not need to be washed all the time, but it is enough to have rainfall and to clean the building. And also, if we add this material to the painting and coating, this is how facades of buildings can clean themselves, self-clean. Also, for instance, if we use the surface of ambulance machines inside, that are also covered with self-cleaning layers. And this is what makes cleaning an ambulance easier. Now, a butterfly is another example. This is quite a beautiful butterfly, but it's only seemingly blue color. And as we can see, these wings are made of lamellas, that is the small plaques that are positioned, superimposed one of each other, and they are semi-transparent, and air is moving between those layers, and therefore the light gives us the effect of a beautiful blue color. But in fact, these butterflies have a different color. The natural color is the one that you can see in the bottom part of this picture. It's rather kind of brownish yellowish. So where can we find such solutions in technology? For instance, in temperature readers and sensors. And for instance, we use sometimes, we can use them, such sensors in such areas where the temperature is really high. Another material is something that imitates the shape of the paw of a gecko. The geckos have such protruding skin parts, and they attach to a surface. So a gecko is capable of controlling how exactly he or she can attach to a surface. And in fact, a gecko can actually attach even using just one finger, and one finger can hold the body weight that is 400 times heavier than the paw itself. And this is exactly but we're currently using different types of scotch tapes and glues. So we can use them on robots, and this is how robots can operate. And now at the very end, some futuristic examples. This is the Biomimetic designing in architecture. That's an environmental city, organic city, master city in Abu Dhabi. It has been built in the desert. They have reduced the emissions of CO2. They provide for photovoltaic energy, wind energy. They use geothermal energy. The city can already be visited. The combustion engine cars have to be left outside the building, but inside they use rapid cabs that are electrically driven cabs, autonomous vehicles. Once they receive an instruction, voice instruction, they can take you to a place you want to go to. Or here you can see some umbrellas. Those umbrellas open up during the day so as to protect against the heat, and the heat energy that is absorbed is stored, and then it is used for heating the buildings inside. And another futuristic example of using a biomimetic solution developed by Mercedes. So they have been inspired by Avatar movie, and so they created an Avatar Mercedes. It's supposed to be bionic vehicle controlled without a keyboard and without any buttons, just with the movement of a palm, and it's enough to select a menu, and it moves. It's a vegan leather. The flooring is made of wood, and also this car is capable of moving forwards and backwards and sideways. So it can actually move sideways as well. So as you can see that such inspirations are out there as well. I do encourage you to observe nature and to observe different phenomena that take place around us, so as we can find a solution that will become world famous. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Witam serdecznie, proszę Państwa. Chciałabym dzisiaj przedstawić...
Welcome cordially, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to present a lecture on Hellbourne Metals. As you know, in the periodic table, most elements are metals. So generally speaking, we use metals in everyday life, in everyday practice, but hardly any of us realize that they also have their dark side. Today, may I focus on a handful of selected ones. If I may, if we manage, we'll have 10 of them discussed today. I'll discuss the worst ones, the ones that we can easily call metals from hell. I'd like to start with gold. As you can see, I've got those beautiful gold flakes here. Gold has for centuries attracted everyone because it's so attractive. It's cool color, so yellow. And it's one of two metals that are not silvery gray bluish, because all the other metals other than copper and gold have that color. So as far as history of gold is concerned, this first stage that I'd like to mention is ancient Egypt. In ancient Egypt, there were about 100 mines where gold was mined. These were slaves and these were convicts. How much gold was there? Well, it's hard to say, because one of the pharaohs said that they have more gold than sand in the desert. Well, it means they must have had a lot of it, but, you know, it was in constant circulation, because the only broken tomb that was discovered by Lords Carnarvon and Carter was that of Tutankhamun. And just for example, let me tell you that the death mask of Tutankhamun was 11 kilos. So you can imagine how much gold they must have had. The second stage in the history of gold is the discovery of America and the conquest. Pizarro and Cortez, and obviously the fall of the Mayan, Aztec, and Inca civilizations. The following stage, very famous, was the gold rush. Really and truly, when gold was discovered, all the prices of spades, even food, went up, which basically meant that the ones who made money on the gold rush were those who invested into equipment and sold that equipment, because they kept healthy mines and they didn't get this gold fever. The most important thing you can say about gold is, well, see, I have a small golden ring here, few grams. Now, just imagine that when gold is produced, for the production of such a little golden ring, at the same time, we produce 20 tons of waste. So a small golden ring produces 20 tons of waste. How come? Well, because the ratio of the input material, that's the iron, the golden ore, to the product is 1,000,000 to 1. So if you find this golden ore, there's not much of it in the world, is then processed either through amalgamation using mercury, very noxious, we will be talking about mercury later, or with cyanide method, and we know that cyanide is no good for you. Other methods, well, when you produce copper, nickel, and other metals. So we need to go through a whole production line to get first copper, for example, and then at the end comes gold. And if you're looking at it from that angle, well, even though it definitely glitters, it has plenty of dark sides. Two more metals. They are copper and it's this browny red. Now we say it's the color of copper, so copper colored. Now compared to gold, it's really an angel, because when we talk about copper, we owe only the Swedish deluge in Poland. Why? Because that was the time when the Swedish found plenty of copper in their territory. Because copper has always been expensive, they used it, they became rich, and they could conquer the world. Another metal that I'd like to present to you is silver. Speaking of silver, silver is practically an angel among all the metals I'm going to present to you, and it's antibacterial, importantly. So, for example, many people use colloidal silver. You can consume it. Unfortunately, there must come that moment when you will make sure you don't go over a certain limit, because if you do, you'll turn blue. Will look like Smurfs, only kind of zombie Smurfs, because it's going to be gray, deathly blue. So yes, that's silver or argyria, silver illness, and unfortunately, the color will stay to the end of the life. There is no medicine that we will know. You can see a gentleman who also now has a white beard, and he called himself Papa Smurf. That's that only perhaps negative feature of silver. Let me go on to lead, Before I pass on to lead, let me tell you, there were only 7 metals known in the ancient world, and they were generally used until the 18th century. Why? Because, to tell you the truth, it was in the 17th, 18th, and then 19th centuries that the remaining metals were only discovered. In the meantime, even if they discovered a metal, they believed that it was only something that destroyed or darkened the ores, platinum, discovered in the 15th, 16th century from Spanish. It means poor silver. And for 500 years, platinum was not used because they didn't know how to use it and what for. But primarily, they thought that it was false silver, that it spoils silver ores. And it was only in the 20th century that uses for platinum were found. And now the prices of platinum are far higher than what they used to be. So the 7 metals of the ancient days: gold, copper, in the order of their discovery, then silver, lead, tin, and we'll be back to tin in a moment, iron, and mercury. So there are 7 metals. Let's take a look at the first 3. Gold, copper, and silver. They are noble metals, which means that their price is quite high. Therefore, we're not going to use them to produce roofs, plates, or large cauldrons for wine, for example. We're not going to produce objects of everyday use. And people in the ancient days had that problem. And then they would use generally lead. Lead was used for piping, used for water in the aqueducts. Now we know that water was not drunk because they believed that water was not really healthy. They drank wine. Wine was prepared in leaden cauldrons, and they used also a salt of lead to make it sweeter. Let's have some more in our body, shouldn't we? Now, that acetate was also in sauces, in various foods. So generally, they were abusing lead, and especially the lead acetate. And it meant that the richer you were, the more, unfortunately, lead you had in your body. And now let's look at the emperors. Many of them had problems with children because lead causes problems with having progeny, but also causes mental problems. If you look at the historical element, you'll see that lead did contribute to the fall of the ancient Rome. Lead, of course, is more than just ancient Rome. Also, in Russia, in the 16th and 17th centuries, in those both centuries, actually, they also had leaden pipes, and it's said that the imperial, well, that it had a very strong influence on Ivan V, known as Terrible. Let's go on talking about lead. You've got to remember that Thomas Midley, hardly anyone knows who Thomas Midley was, but Thomas Midley in 1921 discovered that if you add some of it to fuel, it will work miracles on the engines. Perhaps works miracles with engines, but not with our organism. Beginning with 1960, all the cars used leaded fuel, which means lead was added to it, and it practically continued until 1980s when intensive research was made to answer whether there is any health impact. And then there was a shock. It turns out that lead changes ions of calcium and magnesium in our organism and accumulates in mostly soft tissues. If you look at those, these are bullets. Bullets used to be made of lead. The first one is from Colt. The second is from Sharp's rifle. So lead was also used as ammunition. I'd like now to pass on to tin and pewter. Tin is a metal that is relatively soft. It is present in two forms. There's gray tin. Okay, let's start from white, that's metallic, and there's gray. It's simply powder. When temperature drops below plus 14 degrees centigrade, then this white metallic tin begins to transform into this dust. And that means that under certain atmospheric conditions, simply tin can fall apart. An object made of it can fall apart. That's what happened with Napoleon's buttons. The soldiers who were supposed to go and attack Moscow in winter, that was a very cold time. The temperature was much below 14. All the tin mugs, buckles, and buttons fell apart simply. Similar situation happens with church organs. They are also made of tin, and it has often happened that an organ was built, they were left for winter, and in the spring, when the organist came and tried to play the first chord, he simply had no organ to play. They fell apart. Often, tin objects have that growth on it, which then, after a mechanic stimulus, results in the breakage. A similar thing happened in Wawel with the sarcophagi, because some of those sarcophagi are made of tin or pewter, and they were falling apart, and it was only enough to rise the temperature. All right, that's tin and pewter, but some more information about those. I've got this beautiful pewter cup. That pewter cup is not made of pure tin, because tin, as I said, is soft. So generally, this tin cup was really made of pewter, so there is some lead in it. I told you that it's noxious, that it's detrimental to the health. Imagine the people who drank from those wine, which is acidic, and that lead simply went on to the wine. And those people were also poisoned with lead. All right, let's go on. Tin. One more interesting story. Everyone has heard of the Trojan War, that the reason of it was beautiful Helena, and that Helen of Troy was what the conflict happened about. I'm sorry to disillusion you, ladies and gentlemen, because it's more likely, much more likely, that this was when tin was discovered there. And they quite more likely thought about tin ore, than the beautiful girl called Helen. The sixth metal I'm going to discuss is iron. All of you know that we generally now use steel. Well, there are two things I'd like to direct your attention to. First, iron is something we need for our body. With iron deficiency, we may develop an anemia. Then, speaking of objects made of iron, if you take a look at this old key, you'll see that it's covered with this brownish thing, and that's a typical rust. In case of iron, we have a very bad problem of rusting, because rust, which is a form of corrosion of steel objects, it causes financial trouble. We lose millions of dollars, euro, zlotys, due to the corrosion of steel objects. Eiffel Tower, for example, the symbol of France. Eiffel Tower, late 19th century, World Exhibition, World Expo, was put up in the center of Paris. People of Paris were not really captivated. They said it didn't look cool. It was an eyesore. Luckily, the people who put it up said that it's only going to be there for 5 years, 10, perhaps 15, then they're going to demolish it. After some time, it became the symbol of France or Paris. And now nobody can imagine it not being there. But the problem remained. It was made of pig iron. And the problem is to protect it from corrosion. Every 7 years, it is painted from the floor to the peak, and every 7 years, it's got a bit different color or shade. If we didn't protect it, it would fall, because corrosion would have eaten it up, colloquially speaking. Now let me pass on to metal. It is a thermometer. Don't be afraid, it's a new generation thermometer, hydrogen-free. But I wanted to mention, sorry, not hydrogen, mercury-free. Mercury has a very interesting range of uses. I don't know if you know, but for years it was used as a medication. It was used so that, well, a toxin destroys a toxin, a poison destroys poison. For example, in America, they were beautifully called Dr. Rush's anti-runs pills or anti-diarrhea pills. He was a physician, yes, and he fought the yellow fever. He stayed in Boston during an outbreak of yellow fever, and he also signed the Declaration of Independence, which is why he was a real personage. He was a real tycoon, and he was listened to. He invented those pills, and those pills were used for years. Clark's expedition, who were to use Dakota, used those pills against diarrhea. You know, when we go somewhere, we take water. They didn't have this possibility. They would drink water from the streams, and they often suffered. Now, archaeologists are very happy that they use those pills, only archaeologists, because when they go to the latrine, they can check where Clark went in Dakota and Louisiana, because the content of copper is relatively high there. Another thing, mercury was also used as a drug against syphilis. These were generally different infusions. We know that mercury is worst if it comes to you in vapors. Let's also mention hatters. You've probably heard of the Mad Hatter in Alice in Wonderland. It happened because hatters, people who produced hats, who separated fur from leather, they used the mercury azotium, and they stayed in those vapors. And mercury destroys the human organism, causes problems with breathing, but also problems with the nervous system. There's one more thing about mercury. Minamata illness, perhaps you've heard of it. There is Minamata Bay in Japan, and that's where the name comes from. It was in the Minamata Bay where they had a factory of aldehyde, which just dropped a lot of wastewater. Mercury was accumulated by fish, and the Japanese love sushi, so fish got into human food, and 1,000 people were poisoned with mercury. Now, antimony. Antimony is a metal that students hate. Why? Because it has a specific symbol, SD. Hard to remember. Remember that antimony in the 17th and 18th century was a part of emetic. Emetic was a drug with potassium and antimonium used practically by all physicians. Because if you had problems with stomach, or gentlemen had other problems, they were suffering from the morning after syndrome, they needed to be healthy quickly, they would take it and throw up. And emetic means that it was used for throwing up. But then it turns out that the medical dosage was close to the lethal one. And that emetic sent to the other world quite a lot of people, and perhaps the person most famous who died due to emetic was Mozart, because Mozart favored this emetic. Another metal I'd like to mention is radium. I'm showing to you a watch. Why? Everyone knows that radium was discovered by Marie Curie. Madame Curie, Skłodowska, discovered it, and then it was panaceum. Problems with ears, radium into your ears. Problems with skin, radium ointment. Whatever happened, radium was good for you. I also have here water. That water was also suggested for any stomach problems. They had a radiator, and they would have a glass of water, irradiate it, and every day one to be drunk. You can imagine how it influenced the health of those people. The beginning of the end of this fantastic panaceum was precisely the watch, because the women who put this radium paint on the hands of a watch so that they had those beautiful green light shining, they started to have problems with their jaw. And then they had problems with some malignant tumors. They put the little brush into their mouth to help it stick, to help it paint those thin hands of a watch. Well, interestingly, also other radiating materials were used, for example, for toothpaste. Magnesium. As far as magnesium is concerned, you know that we need manganese and magnesium was also used in carpet raids. Dresden and Tokyo, two best known, which means that they were throwing the bombs and then they set buildings on fire after they were destroyed. 25,000 people died in Dresden, but the greatest bloodshed with the use of magnesium was Tokyo. That was 8th-9th March 1945. It killed 120,000 people and practically the whole Tokyo was on fire. Now, let me pass on to the last metal that we have time to discuss. We have a bell here. This bell comes from Hiroshima. Uranium. Uranium was used for the first nuclear bomb. Why Hiroshima and Nagasaki? Because, as I mentioned with magnesium, there was no more Tokyo. They could skip Tokyo because Tokyo had burned by that time. And then uranium was used for Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Speaking of uranium, remember also the emergencies in nuclear power plants. How about remembering Fukushima, Chernobyl, and one of the first, 1979 in the US, there was a fault in 3 Miles Island. Now, the last of those metals, aluminium, a metal that we use generally now, but we have a very noxious method of obtaining aluminium, and we produce the red sludge, plenty of iron in that, and hard to neutralize. So, speaking of aluminium, we're trying to recycle it, and as you can see, we have here a flower made of an aluminium can, but aluminium cans are recycled because recycling only uses 5% of the energy, and we only have 5% of the waste that we would have if we worked on the ore. Thank you very much for listening to this presentation.
Dzień dobry Państwu, nazywam się Łukasz Kumięga, jestem pracownikiem Zakładu Linguistics.
My name is Łukasz Kumięga. I work at the Faculty of the Applied Linguistics at the University of Silesia. I would like to...
Chciałbym zacząć od lingwistyki. Chciałem przedstawić Państwu właśnie tę dziedzinę wiedzy, pokazać jej rozwój, pokazać jakie były początki, I z jakiego...
I would like to talk about manipulation, and I would like to speak not as more as a sociologist and not as a linguist. We're going to talk about manipulation, and the next part of my presentation is the way linguists understand language, and because this is an element that creates or co-creates reality, social reality. But before we begin on manipulation, I would like to specify the notion of manipulation. I would like to talk about persuasion. I would like also to show an example of such a linguistic exercise. And then we will talk about manipulation. We will talk about lies. And then we're going to talk about the most important point. We're going to talk about fake news. So I'm going to show you an example of an attempt of how to identify fake news and different strategies that are used with the generation of fake news. And the practical dimension of linguistics is my postulate that we need to create a certain community of linguists who are going to look critically at the social reality, and also would see how we create or co-create reality using language. So, as I've said before, I would like to talk about linguistics and why is it that we deal with the manipulation. And linguistics is usually associated with such elements as talking about history of language, or talking about history of different languages. We talk about different analysis of texts and grammars, and also we are usually writing textbooks that help to provide for academic training of philologists and linguists, and sometimes we as linguists are engaged with the development of dictionaries, be they specialist or generic dictionaries. And so we as linguists usually perceive language as a system of linguistic science. So that's more a structural and systemic approach to language. But once we depart from it, and then we will move on to something even more important, that is, and by the way, we depart from these linguistic systems as such. We are talking about the application of language. So what we say, why we say things. And so it's more modern thinking about language, also in the context of today's topic, because the language is something that helps us to create social reality. So we're looking at how we name objects, how we name subjects, we name processes and mechanisms around us, and how we attribute features to them. And also, we also try to explain how we argument in favor of some thoughts or ideas, or we formulate our thoughts against some thoughts. So applied linguistics is something that delves into this reflection. It helps us to better understand the way the language is used in more practical terms. And there are 4 areas that applied linguistics deals with. So this is the use of language, and this is about the optimization of a didactic process. So we create theories and different solutions that I used for didactics, that is training, but also we deal with translation and also optimization of translation. So how specialist languages function and what are the markers of specialist language, because there is the register of the linguistic language, economic language, or technical language. And today we're talking about the mass media, so public communication, that is to say how the mass media communicate with us and how we can read different types of mechanisms, also negative mechanisms that are generated. And also in the context of applied linguistics, just a small remark, just an aside. Here at the Silesian University of Technology, linguistics is a field of science. We have the applied linguistics department, and also this is a major. And if you're not yet studying applied linguistics at the University of Technology in Silesia, you would be more than welcome to join us. Right, so let us move on from the language understood as a system, and let us talk about modern trends as far as the use of language is concerned. And one of a very important context for the use of languages is the notion that unites language with activity. It results from pragmatics, and we also have pragmatic linguistics that departs from systems to actions. So it's all about how we speak. And here, in the context of the use of systems, is that we cannot only and exclusively, as we provide for linguistic analysis, once we look at communication, at social communication, or once we study media communication, we cannot move only and exclusively within the remit of our understanding of language, the language as such, because the process of communication includes many other aspects. So it's the field of studies that is rather complex. So it's not only about language issues, it's also about communication. It's also about psychology. We should include social aspects and political aspects. So there are many different elements that comprise this issue. So once we start talking about communication, we have to take into consideration such things as the goal, objectives, the effects of the communication, how this information is being spread, how it's being understood. And we also have to see which factors interfere with the reading and understanding of this information. Also, as far as social aspects are concerned, we have to take into consideration a number of external factors, such as cultural factors that also affect communication. So in the context of manipulation, and here we will start moving on to talking about manipulation. In fact, the modern linguistics says that due to language, due to communication, we're capable of creating new realities. So we can actually do some performative acts, and a performative act helps us to create a new real state. And for instance, could be a baptism, it could be a court sentence. So someone could be deprived of liberty for 2 years, could be marital contract, it could be marriage, it could be any liability. So in fact, we utter a statement and it becomes a performative act as it creates a new reality. And it is due to by using language, by communication, that we can create reality. And this is how we can change reality. So just a few examples. Let's start with simple examples, and then we will move on to more complex examples. So you enter a room and we say, oh, the air is so close here. So this is an act on our side. In fact, we indirectly ask someone to open a window. So we can communicate such a request directly, and we may simply say, please open the window. So this is the most simple example of how a language is used to change reality. So you enter the room, the air is closed, the window is closed. So you simply ask for opening the window is opened, and everyone is happy, or most of us are happy, because it's not the air is not that close. But then it becomes more complex once we start about media communication, and since we start talking about public communication. For instance, we may have a look at recent events, that is the current situation at the Polish-Belarusian border. There we have had a number of cases where the mass media, with the use of language, may influence the reality and interpretation of this reality. So as far as the Polish-Belarusian border is concerned, there we have a number of migrants, and some people say those are refugees or that those are migrants, but there is a big difference between a refugee and a migrant. A refugee is someone who needs help. A migrant is a person who is traveling in search for work from place to place around the world. So those could be economic migrants, and this again opens a certain field of interpretation of this phenomenon. And another unambiguous linguistically element is that we say that it's do we say it's on the Polish-Belarusian border or Belarusian border, the Polish border? From the linguistics point of view, what we put first is always more important. So this is how we may underscore the significance of the phenomenon depending on the context. So in this particular context, we may actually say by the choice of words and the order of words, we will see what seems to be more important. So which party is more responsible for what is happening at that border. And then the media may go wild, and the mass media may try to describe such events as waves of illegal economic migrants that pose a threat to security of Poland. So using the word wave immediately creates a context of uncertainty of threat. So in this, also the choice of such words as economic migrants immediately changes the focus, immediately changes the perspective. And so how the reader may have a different understanding of what is happening at the Polish-Belarusian border. So those are the elements that show us how, with the use of language, we can change reality, we can construe reality. So again, we're moving back to this reflection about the language, as the language acts and the language has a function. And this is what we called the impressive, ablative, connective function of the language. So what is this function about? So let us talk about this basic function of communication. So we have a sender of a message and there is a communication. And the idea of communication is to send it to the recipient. So the recipient receives this information, and this is how we communicate, and this is how we should take into consideration the receiver of this information. And this incitation function, inducing function, may have different functions. For instance, persuasion or manipulation. So in the case of the inducing function, we're trying to induce a certain emotion. And this could be done in two ways, where we can either persuade someone, so this influence is overt. There is no falsehood. And in the language, we try to accentuate some elements in an open way, but manipulation works differently. In the case of manipulation, we have an instrumental treatment of the recipient of information. So it's the sender's advantage that counts. And so the language is used together with many other elements as to alter, to interfere with the level of consciousness of the receiver. And let us see how persuasion works. So we have to be able to tell the difference between persuasion and manipulation. Persuasion is done in a linguistic way, and many times it's used in advertising. It's going to be advertising of Skoda. It's not that I'm trying to sell you a Skoda. It's merely an example of persuasion. So let's have a look at how persuasion works. What is luxury? Luxury is to be certain of where you go. Luxury is not doing anything just to show off. Luxury is to choose what you like and not needs to be chosen. Luxury is to have time to take joy in small things. Luxury is to have the place to which you would like to return. New Skoda Superb, the new definition of luxury. So that's persuasion. So this is something that is overt and many times used in advertising. So Skoda is trying to tell us and to convince that the Skoda brand is a luxury brand. And we know that luxury brands do not actually associate with Skoda. and maybe BMW or Mercedes would be treated as a luxury brand, but not Skoda. But this one is trying to redefine what luxury actually means. That luxury is not about high price. Luxury is about other things, such as knowing where you go, being confident that there's nothing is being done to show off. So this is a redefinition of the notion of luxury. And this is to tell us that Skoda brand is also luxury brand. So everything is happening here openly. There is no falsehood that is so specific of manipulation. Now, speaking of manipulation or lies, well, it is lying is all about manipulation. And now to begin, a certain remark, and half jokingly, half seriously, I remember the Decalogue, the 10 Commandments, and it does not include the commandment of do not lie. There is no such commandment. What we rather have is do not say false witness against thy neighbor. But basically, it's about not lying, although in the Decalogue, it does not directly say do not lie. Now, let's have a look at different types of defining lies. And here we can have a look at the definition from the Polish dictionary. And it says that lie is presenting presenting information that is not compliant with reality or misleading someone. So let's talk about manipulation as fake news. And fake news is something that I would like to focus on during this presentation. So let us see how all those elements work together. And I have quoted one of the Newsweek editions from 2019, and they say, in the beginning, there was word, and in the end, there was fake news. So if we think historically wise, then indeed word was in the beginning, and word used to be something important, something significant. But recently, we have seen the degradation of the notion of the word, and so words are used to create fake news. And so Newsweek, in this peculiar way, spoke about fake news, and they quote the oldest fake news, that is Pharaoh Ramses II is quoted with regard to the unresolved battle against the Hittites at Qadistan, Syria, where he presented his own big victory. So that is the oldest documented fake news. But what is fake news, and how is fake news generated? So generally speaking, fake news are perceived as incorrect, false information, and usually they are fake news are related to the use of new technology that increases accessibility to this information. So information is easily spread. And so fake news is not the only phenomenon that may be linked to the development of new technologies. We have some other phenomena that also use some elements that are also used by fake news. For instance, we have clickbait or clickbaiting. Also, we, for instance, can use some catchphrase to attract attention. We can exaggerate, or satire may also be used as an element of fake news. So satire is ambiguous as well. Phishing means trying to impersonate a person or institution to extract confidential information illegally. Or how about fake charity? So a fake charity would constitute an attempt to use someone's calamity, such as death or illness, and so people start creating fundraising mechanisms that are faked. And this is something that we can see a lot in the net. But let's talk about fake news as such. And we do not actually have scientific definition of fake news. And well, actually, scientifically, we do say that it's all about propaganda. There is a propaganda dimension to fake news. And if we have a closer look at how fake news is generated, we can see that there is a certain hierarchy. So fake news are generated according to a certain hierarchy. Some fake news are a kind of analysis or just some information out of context or information moved from one context into another. And in linguistics, we say that such processes are called as recontextualization or decontextualization. There may be manipulated information. So partially some parts of information are altered. And the highest level is story totally conjured up stories. So completely fake stories. Now let's have a look at different markers or strategies of generating fake news. So talking about markers, the fake news are quite popular or they're attractive because they refer to some current events. Usually they refer to some ongoing events. Also, they very much manipulate with fear or intimidation. So the authors of fake news are trying to intimidate people or to spread fear in society. Also, fake news many times relate to some city legends, urban legends. Today, as I spoke to an acquaintance of mine, we were thinking about good examples of such urban legends. And here could be an example is of the black Volga car. Now, the modern youth wouldn't know what the thing is, but in the past, the black Volga car was a boogeyman for little children. So if you are not good enough, then a black Volga will come and take you away from us, the parents. So that is an element of such urban myth. And this is how urban legends were being used or are being used. And also another marker of fake news is that they criticize mainstream media, and they usually say that true information is concealed by the mainstream media. And so usually the point is that society doesn't know about something from the mainstream media. And this is how they attribute they say, in fact, that media organizations cooperate with the state authorities. Now, what are the strategies? The fake news language is very much emotional. It's very much scandalizing. Many times they manipulate with the use of pictures, movies, images, video streams, and many times they use unconfirmed sources of information, or sometimes they are also placing links to real good sources of information so as to increase the reliability of a fake news. So let's have a look at a few examples of fake news. In Dziennik Zachodni 2020, we saw this article. So those were the most important fake news in 2019. So let's have a look at a few examples, and we will have a good analysis. So the first is sewage from Warsaw in Gdańsk. So that's a satellite picture that suggests that here we see sewage that enters the Baltic Sea. And of course, this fake news was published in the context of the Czajka wastewater treatment plant in Warsaw. And so the point is that the satellite picture as such is authentic, but it does not show the sewage entering the Baltic Sea. It actually shows the aftermath of a flood that took place several months before. And this is the flood water entering the Baltic Sea. So with such strategies, we can see recontextualization. Another example, a very frequent practice in the realm of fake news. So usually public persons are used. Here we can see Olga Tokarczuk's account at Twitter, her Twitter account, and there we see different tweets in the English language. Of course, it's a fake account of Olga Tokarczuk, but of a public person. So many times public persons fall victim to such practices. Another example is a video footage of a meeting with a Democratic Party congresswoman in the US. And at that meeting, one of the ladies spoke and she introduced herself as an environmental activist. And she said that a way to save the planet was to eat children. But the problem is that that woman was not an environmental activist, but she was a provocateur. And she was an anti-environmentalist, and that was the mechanism of that particular fake news. And this is a former member of parliament, Krystyna Pawłowicz, at Jarocin Festival. Another attempt at discreditation of Madam Pawłowicz, Mrs. Pawłowicz, by manipulating the picture. And she responded to this fake news, showing her real picture from her days, young days. And indeed, she looked a different way in the youth as she was young. And another example, this is the LGBT demonstration in Paris, and one of the web portals shows or tries to depict, or rather to disinform, and they say that the LGBT demonstration in Paris, and one could see something like the death penalty for homophobia. Again, this is falsified information, because what we really see is an incorrect translation of the text. The correct translation is a death penalty is homophobic. And so we can see how fake news are being generated. And another slide. This is the last slide that shows didactic space. And this is what it's important to know about mechanisms that affect how we generate the fake news. And we may even have some philosophical aspects of it. If we understand something, it means that we have learned about it. But if we understand it, it means we cannot be manipulated, we cannot be ruled about it. So it's important to have knowledge, and the knowledge is the result of education. And so it's important to provide for education. And also we have to be careful about social media and how they operate. We need to understand, for instance, that Facebook accounts sometimes social media may be used to fight fake news. So as practical linguists, practitioners, we may use the social media to fight fake news. Thank you very much for your kind attention, and see you.
Dzień dobry Państwu. Nazywam się Andrzej Katunin I jestem...
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Andrzej Katunin, and I come from the Mechanical and Technical Department of the Silesian University of Technology. I'd like to tell you today how to win with a casino. We'll talk about the chaos theory. Of course, you can win with a casino. It was proved by people who are now scientists from the University of California. However, how did they do it, and how you can do it? Well, let me tell this to you during this lecture today. How about starting from the start and then go one by one? What is chaos? When you say chaos, what does it bring to our mind? First of all, in our mind, it's a kind of disorder. All the cables you see here on the slide are an image of chaos. That's how we understand it non-technically. But technically, chaos is quite well ordered. Historically, if we went centuries back, chaos was identified with something primary, something primordial. Chaos was where the first gods came out from, Uranus and Gaia. Uranus turned into the skies, Gaia into ground. Ancient Greeks believed that chaos was something that gave birth to everything. Let's now go on to the mathematics that we're going to deal with. What is chaos mathematically? What is chaos in physics? On this slide, you can see a butterfly, and the butterfly effect is a term that became very popular. It's a must in pop culture, and you probably remember a film that was called The Butterfly Effect. It came in 3 parts, and any minor change in the past resulted in significant changes in the future. Really, this film very well spoke about what chaos really is, because chaos is something that is sensitive to the initial conditions. I'll tell you what initial conditions are. And secondly, there is something that we simply cannot envisage, that butterfly. Where do we have that butterfly in the chaos theory and the slogan? Well, in the slide, you can see a butterfly, but next to the butterfly, there's something that looks very much like a butterfly. That's Lorentz attractor. In a moment, we will be back to the attractor. It's a map of how a point can move, and it draws those lines, those curves. It is an attractor, not a tractor, and attractor comes from the verb to attract, bring closer. It's a figure that originates from the operation of a dynamic system. Nonetheless, let's see what chaos is all about, where it comes from. Let's start with those simple objects, namely pendula. A pendulum you see on the screen is the Foucault pendulum. You can see one of them in the Center of New Technologies in our technical university. You can come and see how it works. But the original experiment took place in 1851 by a French physicist called Foucault, who suspended a huge brass ball weighing 28 kilo on a long steel wire. The wire was 67 meters long, and he suspended it in the Pantheon. This, at the time, was the highest building in Paris, and there he conducted his experiment, which actually proved that our Earth goes round its axis. It moves around its axis. Why do we mention that? It's not chaotic. It's not following the path of chaos. We can very well describe how this pendulum behaves, mathematically, of course. But if we put another pendulum on that, we get something interesting. Please see what's happening. We have two which are moving. Either of them has two parts. two masses. One is marked red, one is marked blue. And see, in the beginning, they behave very similar manner. But after a while, their movement differs very much. And that's precisely something that is the depiction of the chaos theory. Just see at the trajectories of those pendula. If we introduce a small change, in this case, this is the angle of one of the arms. So it's 0 and 0 in one, and it's 0.01 in the other. A very small deflection of one of those sections. And after a time, they will be moving along absolutely different curves. That's a great sensitivity to the initial conditions. It can be the angle, it can be the weight of this section, and even the smallest change at the start can absolutely change the behavior of the whole system. Actually, chaos theory was a work of a coincidence. It was a certain experimentation in the 1960s when Edward Lorenz started his studies of the weather. However, just the problems connected to it started much earlier, and they date back to the days of Newton and the movement of celestial bodies. As you probably remember, ladies and gentlemen, Newton was the man who invented calculus. And he tried to apply calculus in various situations for description of various physical phenomena. He was also interested in astronomy. Then in the Middle Ages, astronomy was something that was of great interest to many scientists, and the movement of the planets was enigmatic and mysterious. So Newton, as a famous great scientist, decided to disclose those mysteries. He decided to describe the motions of two celestial bodies, the Earth and the Moon. It was very easy. He made his equations, and this helped to describe that motion very, very precisely. The following step was the description of three celestial bodies. He put the sun on top of it. He was really surprised, as years into the attempt, he couldn't do it. He couldn't describe it precisely. The only thing he could do was to describe it in great simplification. One of those bodies, for example, is immovable. So major simplifications, but after those trials that after him continued and lasted hundreds of years, a question was asked: will there be a moment that our planet will come out from its orbit, fly away, or hit the sun, collide with the sun, or fly away into space? No one really could answer those questions for hundreds of years, really. In quite recent times, let's say about 100 years ago, a bit more, a certain king, he was Oscar II, announced a competition. He was the king of Norway and Sweden, a mathematic competition, as he was really an aficionado of mathematics. It contained plenty of problems and issues, but the crucial one was that of the three bodies. That's what you call that problem. This simulation shows you the movement of those. There is gravity included, and this movement, this motion is very complicated, and you can see the trajectories drawn by the individual balls. Those trajectories are highly complicated, and now you need to have some equations, and equations can't define where a given ball, a given sphere, is going to be in 10 seconds, in 20, in a month. There were plenty of eminent mathematicians who decided to join this competition, and one of them was the French Henri Poincaré, who said he was not going to work on equations, but he'll do it graphically. If the system is so complex, let's look at the graphic side of it. And he suggested that this tangle would be cut, intersected with a plane, and he'll see what he can see on that plane. And he used those planes to analyze the motion of the planets. In this case, obviously, we're not getting a precise solution because there's no precise solution in this case, but we can tell you how our objects move. Just looking at this plane as this intersection. And that intersection is called an attractor. So it's this geometric figure that describes those dynamic systems, like our planets, for example. That was the first step for the field of mathematics and physics that's known as the theory of chaos. But that was not yet created. Formerly, it was Lorentz who created it. Lorentz was a meteorologist who made calculations for forecasting weather. For example, for the British Royal Air Force during the Second World War, so as to plan flights of the fighter planes. You needed at the time good weather to fly military planes. He spent a lot of time on that. He made models. Models were based on calculus. And those models of the weather, the fundamental one designed by Lorentz, contained 3 calculi. He programmed his computer. In the slide, you can see what such a computer looked like. It was quite different from contemporary ones. There was a printer that provided the results, and the central unit, something which looks a bit like a freezer next to it. And that was this central unit. That was what the Lorentz's computer looked like. And he did his calculations on it. He actually did all the calculations. He made his weather forecast. Here, the input in the algorithm was the temperature of the air. And he had results with quite high precision. Only that, he decided to recalculate them. And when he was doing another round of his calculations, he decided to round them up. Now, worth noting is that it was a very small rounding. It was below 0.1%. So really nothing there. He recalculated and was so surprised to get entirely different results than before. He started testing where the problem was. Perhaps there was a problem in the equations or in the computer, or perhaps computer misfired. No, everything was fine. The problem was in the problem, namely the equations describing the weather were chaotic, and that minor change, rounding out those numbers, had Lorentz obtain absolutely different results. Okay, what is happening to the weather now? We know that we can forecast the weather with some precision. We see it's done on TV for tomorrow, for the following days, but it must have happened to every one of us. We take our Wellingtons and we have an umbrella, and the weather is fine all the day long. Even though the technology works, even though it's been more than 60 years since the days of Lorentz, when he forecasted the weather using those quite primitive machines, now we have supercomputers and we still can't manage the weather. It is a chaotic problem, so we cannot highly precisely tell you what the weather is going to be. To be able to forecast the weather, we use powerful machines. What you can see here on the screen are supercomputers. These are whole hallways of computers working at full speed only to tell us what the weather is going to be in the coming 48 hours. That's what our technology is capable of. These are computers in Warsaw at the ICM. They do weather forecasting for many meteo stations in Poland, for the TV. And such a supercomputer is really sweating for hours to have results for the coming 48 hours. And its precision is just over 90%. It is not 100. So weather forecasting a month ahead is really doing it absolutely shooting blind. Well, we can't say that the weather is going to be what we envisage is going to be. This is how the chaos theory era started. And in our times, it's penetrated all the fields of science. And in a moment, you're going to learn it, to see it for yourselves. But let me return to the title of our lecture, the casino. Chaos theory became a certain precedent. In the 1970s, a group of graduates of the California University designed an algorithm which made it possible to forecast how to work on roulettes. They even had a mini computer. You can see it here on a slide. You could keep it in your shoe. And that group, they were just several people. They called themselves eudemons. From the Greek mythology, eudemon was this good demon. So two of them went to the casino. One of them was sitting at the table with electrodes on the body. The other was sitting next to him, doing calculations on this computer in the shoe, and passed information to the colleague how to play. The algorithm was at the time sufficient enough that with $100 put in, they could win about $44. Quite profitable. They won about $10,000. Unfortunately, the end of the story was that the one who betted got burned. The system didn't work fine, and he was nearly electrocuted. But the fact is a fact that the chaos theory became a help to understand things that as yet were not understandable. Those things are now taken into consideration in the casinos. If they didn't take it into consideration, you'd probably be on your way to casino and not listening to me now. Now, chaos theory has plenty of uses. For example, in medicine, in medical diagnostics, EEG, electrocardiogram, every one of us has probably gone through those tests. We're helped here in diagnosing our health. So beating of our heart and the brain waves by nature are chaotic. When they are chaotic, this proves that we're healthy. But when they're becoming periodical, this means, well, it's a serious illness. Moreover, do we have some technical trouble? Economy. In economics, we also use chaos theory to be able to forecast the values of different currencies, products. Thanks to chaos theory, obviously, we cannot forecast them very precisely, but we more or less can tell which way everything is going. We are now going through a pandemic, and even here, chaos theory helps us. Obviously, it won't solve the problem that has engulfed the world now, but thanks to the chaos theory, we can prognosticate how the pandemic is going to develop. TV tells us that we may have a peak in 2 weeks, and perhaps it will be gone by the end of the month, and we're going to have a dropping wave. It's the chaos theory that can give us this information and prep up for a lockdown, for example, for various problems, for perhaps never bringing this lockdown to reality, never making it happen. We can find chaos theory also at home. A dripping tap, a dripping faucet. They are chaotic, the drops dripping from it. Robert Shaw wrote about it, one of the eudemons, the guys who were making money on the roulette. And we can observe that chaos here at home. Then cake with candles. When we blow the candle on a cake, we can see smoke coming up in a specific way. First, it comes in an equal strain, and then it starts to cuddle. Because from laminary, we move to turbulent, and in the turbulent flow, we see chaos setting in. So chaos is what we encounter everywhere, and many other phenomena are something we can describe using precisely the chaos theory. For those of us who would like to plunge into more chaos information fractals, may I suggest my latest book, because it speaks, among others, of those things. It describes the whole history of mathematics, the path that fractals and chaos have gone through. That path was not an easy one, certainly, to reach contemporary days and to find a practical application in all the contemporary sciences, actually. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope we meet again next year. Thank you very much.
Dzień dobry, nazywam się Patryk Przychodko, jestem studentem 4. roku.
Hello, my name is Patryk Przychodko. I'm a student of the 4th year of architecture, and in this Researchers' Night, I would like to take you to a remote trip to accessibility realm. And after a brief intro, I would like to talk about aging society, universal design and general accessibility, and we will finish with accessibility workshops with the use of geriatric suits. So what is accessibility? Accessibility is very much linked to universal design. And first and foremost, universal design should be used in architecture, in planning public utility buildings and public spaces. And accessibility standards are presented in some of the legal documents, and usually those standards are developed by cities for their own needs, so as to collate all of the guidelines that need to be taken into consideration when designing public spaces. And in Poland, more and more cities are already introducing such documents in their cities, which is a very positive thing. And one may say that undoubtedly this is a very good solution for public projects. Now, what is this accessibility? And first and foremost, we need to take into consideration the process of aging society. This is the result of the fact that Polish society and European societies are aging due to the welfare that we enjoy, and we have a smaller birth rate, a lower birth rate, and so many times the birth rate is actually negative. And if we're young now, those who are young now, with the age they will become older, will they not? So we, as architects, should need to make sure that everyone has accessible places all over the world. However, aging processes take different shapes and forms. Some people age slower and later, but there are some cases where a young person may already be classified as a person in such a medical condition that is comparable to the health condition of an older person. So we start our aging between the 30th and the 40th year of life, but the senior age actually starts with the age of 60. So why am I talking about it? In theory, we may live as long as 120 years, and senior age begins with the age of 60, which means in theory, half of our life, we are already classified as old age people. So we should prepare, as we're young, we need to prepare our world to make it fully accessible, both for people with disabilities and the aging societies. Because if we're rather young now, it is not to say that we will be like that all the time. And you cannot cheat on old age, because our nervous system changes with age, time of reaction changes, breathing problems appear. We have also lower functioning. There are some renal problems. There are problems with urinating. Also, the skeletal and muscle system change. Also, the posture, balancing become problematic. And also the cardiovascular system deteriorates, the nutritional system deteriorates. So what is important, skin condition deteriorates as well as sight. So with age, we would end up with some field of view disorders. And that is important from the point of view of public spaces. So universal design is focusing on
Przede wszystkim tworzyć przestrzenie publiczne.
Universal design focuses on creating public spaces accessible to all that would have their own ergonomy, that would be ergonomic, and also that such spaces would be user-friendly. So here we see the 8 principles of universal design. First and foremost, all structures, items, and objects designed with the use of universal design principles should meet the following criteria. Each one should have the right to be easily used in any place, regardless of his or her physical condition. This could be a young person, sporty person, or this could be an old age person or a person with disabilities. Also, such objects should be intuitive in use. For instance, if one enters a town hall, should not have problems with understanding its functioning layout. Also, people should be capable of using different multimedia solutions. Everyone should feel equal. And therefore, it means that everyone should have a possibility of using architectural solutions and items. Also, information should be legible and clear. This is very important so that everyone can understand. Hi, hello, hi there. Hi, hello. So, such legible information is very important. And also flexibility is quite important. Sorry, I was distracted a little bit, but I'll try to accelerate. Now, tolerance to errors. Both young people, but also senior persons can make mistakes, can do mistakes. And so everything should be done in such a way that it's all error-proof, so that such errors would not lead to any harm done to a health condition. Also, we have the area space, the area of a space should be adequate to a function. For instance, toilets for persons with disabilities. Sometimes we're dealing with old buildings, they need to be adapted, and sometimes we have problems, for instance, how to create a toilet facility for persons with disabilities so that it could be used by persons on wheelchairs, so that they do not have any problems with using a toilet. So I think sometimes when we're designing, we need to remember about it. And so with any new project, we should be really clear about that. And all new projects should be done in compliance with accessibility standards. Now, another point, perception of equality. So no one can be, no one, in fact, should face any problems caused by his or her physical condition. Now, the idea is to create society free of barriers. So in every village, in every city, in every town, everyone should feel comfortable. So that's an idea of designing for all. And this is quite important because many times people do not really understand that sometimes there is a staircase that it's quite difficult to deal with, even for a healthy person, not to mention an older person, elderly person that already has got some health conditions, and sometimes it's very difficult to negotiate a staircase. So negotiating a staircase might be quite difficult for a healthy person, not to mention an elderly person with disabilities. And so we wanted to organize such accessibility workshops and for different users. And so we decided to use geriatric suits. And of course, such geriatric suits, not fully, but still, they give this sense, or rather this gives us a possibility to imitate the way we feel, they perceive the environment in geriatric age. So the posture is altered. There is a very different feel on how we feel the body weight in our joints, and it's very different the way we that we can do everyday activities. So the American football team responded to our request. The Techie Falcons and so two sportsmen decided to use geriatric suits. So those are the people who are very sporty, they're very active, they're very physically active. And so these sportsmen had to do some simple everyday tasks using geriatric suits. Now let's have a look at a number of at some video material that show the use of geriatric suits. So here we can see these boys doing some exercises without geriatric suits, and then the same exercises in geriatric suits. And in the bottom, you can see the timeline for those exercises. You can see the difference in performing these tasks with and without suits. So you can see that it takes much more time to perform these tasks. So the entire weight of this geriatric suit is approximately 20 kilograms. Also, we have some stiffenings in knee joints and elbow joints, so moving around becomes more difficult. So people in senior age are already facing problems. For instance, it's not so easy to take a seat on the bench, or it's not so easy to get up. And here we're doing another exercise, just twisting around with passing a ball. So mobility becomes problematic, and also holding objects is not so easy in a geriatric suit, so everything becomes slower. And this is imitation of negotiating some barriers. So it's just a bench, 35 centimeters high. So of course, in public spaces, we should not such barriers, but it actually shows what happens and what the differences are. So again, you can see where we have some weights around the ankles, and they made it also more difficult to move around, and coordination became more difficult. Now it's just a regular exercise of passing the ball. So you can see the time of reaction is much slower. And you see that this exercise seems to be much more difficult. The players are wearing goggles. The goggles imitate the curving of the field of vision, and a healthy person wouldn't have any problems, but an elderly person many times has impaired field of vision, despite wearing the glasses, the regular spectacles. So for instance, sometimes there are problems with seeing flat surfaces in the public space. So it's important to create such pavements and such thoroughfares so that they look different. So here we can see some hill. We can see what the boys can do with our geriatric suit on the upper image, and it's not so easy in the picture below. So the entire suit is quite heavy, and here we see that movement is not so easy anymore. And here we can see balancing act. So we can see that it's very easy to keep balance on the left side, but keeping the balance on the right side is not so easy. That is due to the impaired field of vision. And also the balancing is much more difficult because the geriatric suit is not balanced. And this is what happens a lot with the older persons. Now, the basic thing is the stairs. Again, you can see that the boys on the right need more time to negotiate the staircase. And that is the reflex, so reaction time, response time. Now let's see what happens. Here we got where he got it, and here we can see that the direction is much delayed. So the difference is quite major, but as we were recording the movie, only at the fourth time, those boys were capable of actually catching the ruler, because for the first 4 times they could not catch the ruler at all. And also we have the hand tremor simulator that imitates hand tremor that results from some spine disorders. And it also is the result of the Parkinson disease. So we can see here that the Tyche Falcons text on the top was done without the simulator on. It's quite normal, but once the simulator is switched on, and as soon as the electrical current goes through the mouse, immediately writing becomes very problematic. And this is what happens a lot with many of the older persons. And finally, just an interesting point. We are trying to put some sugar into a cup of tea or coffee, and as you can see, this is very difficult. And now I would like to show you the entire video stream, video feed from this workshop, and the whole point is to raise awareness of society. And this workshop on accessibility was prepared by the architecture students at the Silesian University of Technology. And at the end, we will hear the boys speaking about their impressions. So I think that this could be quite interesting. And by this, we shall conclude. Hi. Within the framework of the accessibility workshop organized by the Silesian University, we're meeting the representatives of the Falcon Tyche Football Club. Hi, hello. Yes, hi, my name is Krzysztof Świstek and I represent Tyche Falcon Club. We are an American football team set up in 2008 and we play in Poland's best division, and we are a leading Polish team. So we have conducted a workshop geared at demonstrating how the human body behaves, having reached senior age. Athletes from our club first completed a range of activities regularly performed in everyday life as able-bodied people perform them, and then they don suits designed to imitate movement dysfunctions of the elderly. So we're back to the Faculty of Architecture of Silesian University of Technology and the Accessibility Workshop organized by the Lab 60 Plus Learn Society is over. I'm here with the athletes of Tichy Falcons. So what are your experiences of this workshop? Well, I'll be honest, it was quite a shock to see how difficult it is to perform the simplest actions. For example, the time it takes you to get up from a bench after you've put on that suit. I got tired faster, which meant I needed a much longer time before embarking on another exercise. It was a difficult task, even though when we went through the exercise before putting on the suits, they were not difficult and we're really fit. But when we put on the suits, our options were limited to a certain degree. So we got tired more quickly, and then the breath. We were sometimes short of breath, but we finally made it. So it wasn't an easy task even for the athletes. Thank you for the completion of accessibility workshops. And so let me invite you to comment on the film and follow our social media and the social media of Tichy Falcons. Many thanks. Thanks. So hello again after this short video material. So we would love to run such workshop live. Of course, it is possible. And if anyone is interested in feeling this, how it actually is to be a senior person, then join us at the University of Silesia to try on the suit. Now, why am I talking about it? Initially, I mentioned that it's worth thinking about our own future already now. And we're still young, we're still strong, and I'm not discriminating anyone, and but the greater share of our society is fit for now, but we all need to start thinking and to start acting, because we may age in dignity with full accessibility and with a sense of security, because it's important to lead a comfortable life in the future as well. And it would be nice to have our retirement in good public spaces with using proper, adequate items without being lost in this world. And just a few designing practices and prompts from our 60 Plus lab. It shows how we should be designing our everyday lives. For instance, the stairs. The stairs seem to be the most important hurdle in public space, but we can improve the stairs. What is enough is simply we need to add or to design the stairs with a railing at an adequate height, so that to help any person, also persons with disabilities, or someone may feel somewhat weaker than usual, just have a railing to support on. And many times in public spaces, we do not have such a simple thing as railing. As a railing, I also think that we should have two rails available, so that a child could also use this railing to negotiate the stairs, because usually we have the stairs of 17.5 centimeters of a step, and it's not a problem for a tall person, but it becomes a very different story for a small person. So also it's important to provide for continuity of the railing, so that the railing is not disrupted at any point, because if it's a blind person, then the blind person would not know what is happening. And if there is a bit of a railing missing, it means that such person may be totally confused. And then such a blind person would need to feel for space and to find the continuation of the staircase, and may get lost. And if such a person is looking for space, then finally meets another step, and the blind person might mean it's not a wall and not a step. and so is becoming confused. And so negotiating such staircase becomes very difficult once you don't see it. Another thing is designing a kitchen. Every one of us has got a kitchen. And here we have some basic principles for designing a kitchen. So just to make our lives easier. So for instance, we do not use dark colors, but bright colors, because persons in elderly age feel better in brighter space. And it's much easier to see things, because dark colors interfere with our perception of space. Also, we need to have contrasting features and contrasting railings so that we see them well, and they should be comfortable to use without any sharp edges that may have a negative effect. Also, we should not have glazed surfaces or cupboards positioned above the head, because it's very difficult to reach out to an overhead cupboard for a person on a wheelchair, or for instance, elderly persons may have problems with extending their hands upwards and reaching out for objects that are placed in an overhead cupboard. So this may be problematic, and it's important to have matte floor. No one likes having this sense of being on a swimming pool, at a swimming pool, and glossy surfaces. They may look cool, but they're not really functioning well. So we should create space that feels to be comfortable. And as far as public space is concerned, it's important to provide for information boards, and they should be designed in a very sensible way so that they're easily seen. And it's not only about the typeface, because sometimes designer typeface makes it impossible to read information, but coloring is important as well, because people who have problems with degenerative diseases, they have problems with telling the difference between some colors. So as far as colors are concerned, they should be carefully selected in public spaces, and they should be used universally, because this is when information may be transmitted to the largest possible number of people. And here we can we have taken into consideration that some people may suffer from degenerative diseases, and that means that we should have should create space in such a way so that we do not incite the sense of anger. So coloring should rather be neutral, so that people feel rather well with this environment. And at the very end, here we can see some the very famous meme. We see that designers like things. For instance, there is a small space of a ramp, and then we end up with such curiosities where, for instance, we see that the ramp is ended with a drop, and we see and the elevation angle being inappropriate. And can you possibly imagine a person on a wheelchair on that ramp, or a person with a pram with a child inside? So actually, it's up to us to make sure that it is all designed well, so that architects do not do such inappropriate installations. Okay, that's it from me. Thank you very much. And I would invite my colleague who has helped me a lot. It's my debut as far as public speaking is concerned, and I hope that you have found my presentation interesting. I hope it's going to be better next time around, and perhaps we'll meet again. So again, my name is Patrick Prichodko. I'm the fourth-year student at the Faculty of Architecture, and it was very pleasant for me to, I was very pleased to take part in this researchers' night. Thank you. Bye-bye.